Welcome to the Laws of Style, featuring conversations on creativity, fashion, and the law from the leading edge of our economy and culture. Hosted by noted fashion lawyer Douglas Hand.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast, The Laws of Style. Downloading to you from the offices of HBA, high above Bryant Park, in the Garment District of New York City. I'm your host, Douglas Hand, fashion lawyer and fashion law professor, and I am joined today by client and friend Candice Cuoco, who is a women's wear designer. Candice, thanks for joining us today.
Really excited to be here.
So you are in from the West Coast.
Mm-hmm.
How was your trip?
It was hell, but no, I'm kidding. It was really good. I was excited to be here.
Yeah. And you are here. Well, you brought your daughter,
I did.
You're doing a little sightseeing.
Mm-hmm.
But are you also doing any work while you're here?
Yeah, it's as being your own boss and entrepreneur and being in fashion, there's always work,
right,
no matter where you are.
Well, let's get into it and start maybe more towards the beginning.
The good stuff.
The good stuff, exactly. You have a very interesting story, a lot of which, on Project Runway that you've been on twice, 2 different types of episodes, and we'll get into that. You've opened up about your childhood and some of the challenges that you faced growing up in Northern California. Just without asking anything specifically, can you lay those out and how they led you to be the creative person that you are today?
Yeah, I always like to say that I had a very colorful upbringing. I think that's like a great way of putting it. And yeah, I did open up about it on Project Runway. I wish they would have continued on with the message. So,
let's fill in the blanks.
This is a great opportunity.
Exactly.
I was born in Hayward, raised in Oakland, but all around the Bay Area. I call myself a Bay baby.
Okay.
And on Project Runway, I vetted that both of my parents were drug addicts. My mom was an IV drug user. My dad in and out of jail. Raised around, biker world.
Okay.
Very colorful upbringing.
Were they dealing drugs as well, or was it just using and?
I think my dad had his heyday. He definitely. It's a morbid family joke, but I guess that I used to carry, certain drugs in my teddy bear when I was younger. So it was just a different lifestyle. And our family vacations consisted of going up to the snow in Nevada to like the Mustang Ranch, which is like a whorehouse, So right. It was like this very, it was different, but to me it was normal. Like that was normal. And my parents, sure, they had an addiction, but they were badasses, and I mean it in the sense that they were strong in what they believed in, and they always let me know that they loved me. And I think at the end of the day, knowing that you're loved and that no matter what you do in this world, whether my mom used to say, I don't care if you're a doctor or a prostitute, you're going to be the best one there is, which is probably not the best advice I probably would say give your kids, but like it worked for me because something set in and it ingrained in me, like no matter who I am, whether I'm a complete fuck up, pardon my language, or if I'm just, in the eyes of the world, this huge success, they will always have my back and I will always be loved. And it's not the you can talk to me kind of thing. It's just like really like I could be at rock bottom and they would just consider me the world, and they did. So yeah, it was hard, but I think that great people don't always need to have great upbringings, and they don't always have to have great houses and great cars. I don't think that makes a great person, and I think it's actually the opposite, like not saying that this was easy or glorified, but it helped me appreciate the bottom.
Okay.
And when you know what the bottom is, it's kind of like finding faith, or like finding your faith in yourself or God or religion or something. You only can really look up from there.
Well, and things are really real, right?
They are.
Because you're at a place where you can't go
anywhere else. There's nowhere else to go but up.
Being in a situation where you're really back to the wall, it must really cast in great relief what you want to do with your life.
Yeah.
And also perhaps put you in a mindset where you feel like risking it all isn't risking that much.
No.
And so you can take chances that other people maybe don't.
I mean, yeah, because everyone says like it's so hard to like start fashion and like to get into it and like, you know, start creating, and because I don't have the money to do this and I don't have the time, and it's like, well, I had nothing. Like I literally like had nothing. Raised on welfare. You know, we'd have bologna sandwiches sometimes. It was interesting, but at the same time, when, like I said, like, you know what it's like to be hungry. And so you kind of start, the only way to get through it is to start appreciating that feeling.
Yeah.
Like really starting to love the hunger. And when you love that hunger, you want it for the rest of your life. So, I mean, like literally, figuratively, emotionally. So it just bred a natural creative, I think, in my point of view. I'm just like always starving for more because of, not in fear of not having anything, because I've been there, I've settled in it. But it's just a feeling that I'm very comfortable and proud of. And it's just like you dive in and you get into the kind of like the depths of things. And like that's what life was for me. It wasn't fun. It was very deep and emotional, and it was hard. And sometimes that often I think creates like the most beautiful stories. It's like the harder ones, and those are the people I kind of love and appreciate the most.
And it didn't drive you to maybe more prototypically career-oriented, financially successful paths that would involve hard work, like becoming a physician or a lawyer or something like that. In your case, or tell me. I mean, tell me if that was part of your mindset as you were struggling. I'm going to make something of myself, and before you had settled on it being something career-oriented, not settled, but reached for that.
Yeah.
Were there thoughts in your mind that I'm going to, do something that traditionally has a high income attached to it?
No, I actually, my goal as a little girl was to. My mom always told me that she always told my sister and I, we have different dads. My dad's Italian, her dad's black. We raised under the same roof. Same mom, thick as thieves. She's the reason why I got into fashion. We can get into that later. She always told us, you're going to be the ones to break the mold. Like, there's addiction throughout the whole entire family, and you're not going to do drugs, and you're going to be something. You're going to be something, and you're going to do it. And my dad would tell me the same thing. You're going to do something, and you're going to do it really, really well. And so it wasn't like you have to grow up and be a doctor, or you're going to be this, you're going to be that. It's just something that makes you happy. So that already was, which is not, I guess, common that parents tell their kids, And again, we didn't have money. It was just, what am I going to do? I don't know, to feed my soul. But, you don't really find that out until later in life. But no, when I was younger, what I wanted to do was get a job that could afford me an apartment that had white furniture because it was clean, a black cat, and a black Toyota Corolla. And enough food that I wouldn't be hungry. And those were my goals. Not to get married, not to have this like grand career, I'm just like, and I look back and I'm like, well, I've surpassed that. So good job, But no, I never, at the time before I had my daughter, I didn't have a plan for life. Nobody went to work. Like my mom didn't, they didn't do the 9 to 5.
Well, how did the creative impulse lead to an education focused on design and weave your sister into it? I mean, how is she the one responsible for you making the choice to become a fashion designer?
So I had my daughter when I was 17, which thank God, because she gave me purpose. Like as soon as she came out, I then appreciated life. Like the minute, I'll probably cry. The instant, and I wish that, I wish that feeling on everyone, but she completely changed me. I was this angry, bitter, mean, person, and I held on to everything. And I think I needed to at that time. I think life it demands certain things from you to survive or get through that period in your life. And at that time, it was that baggage, that emotional baggage. And, I was very proud of it, and I held it very well, and it was very strong to me. And then I had her, and I turned into this like little mush bucket, and it demanded a different side to me. And I knew when she came out that I needed to make money, because that's a thing in life, I do admire the emotional value in people, but I was 17, graduating high school. I needed to make money, so I thought I wanted to become a nurse because I figured they made money, not because that's what I wanted to be, and not it sounds ridiculous.
Well, you like white outfits.
Yeah.
Basic colors, white, red, black.
I do.
Do. Maybe
I could have worn, I saw I didn't even know that they wore, like the what are they called? Nurse scrubs?
Right.
Like the outfits. I wasn't even aware. I just thought this is going to, feed my child. Right. And I got through a couple years of school, and I volunteered, and first day on the volunteer job, I was like, this is not for me, and I quit. And I went through every odd and end job, worked for Ross, and at the time, I was working at Home Depot. Okay. And I was running a few departments. I was a department supervisor.
Okay. Did you ever drive a forklift or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, forklift. Yeah. It was the Oakland Home Depot. Met a lot of really beautiful, grounded people there that I still love and admire today. But I was real depressed. I was so unhappy, and I was watching my daughter watch me be depressed, and she became this melancholy soul just like I was. And I thought, this is not what I want her to see a woman as. I don't want her to, have to hide her emotions and harden herself. So I'd like to say I quit because I had that courage, but I didn't. I got fired. So they fired me. And I'm sitting on, my sister's couch because I had to move in with her. I had no money. And off of 35th, in the middle of the hood, on welfare. And I'm bawling. And she's like, why are you crying? Because I got fired and I have, nothing. And she was like, okay, that's a great thing. You have nothing, so there's nothing to lose. Okay. And she goes, I don't know what I need to do with my life. What am I going to do? And she goes, well, why don't you go to school to make shit? And I'm like, crying, what? You mean design, clothes, a fashion designer, Tanea? My sister's name is Tanea. And she goes, yeah, you stole my curtains last week, and you wore them as a mini skirt for your birthday the other week. You go to school to make shit. And I'm like, they don't really make any money. And I sound like someone's unsupportive mother. Right.
Right.
No, it's not a career.
Give me the year.
I couldn't tell you the year. I could tell you that I was 20.
Okay.
I was 20, 21.
All right. So
yeah.
2000.
I'm 31, 10 years ago.
Okay. Yeah. So mid-aughts. All right.
So it's a hot minute ago. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And she was like, listen, how much money do you have? And she's like, nothing. I have nothing. I tell her, okay, great. You've already created a few things, and you don't, no one's ever showed you. You're creative. That's the only time that you're happy is when you're literally creating something. And so that was very profound of her, no one had ever really, my mom, my dad did, but it was a moment. And she goes, so, if one thing we know how to do is we know how to figure out how to do it without nothing. And I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So she sat me in front of the computer. We actually could afford the internet at the time. And I started looking for schools, and
lo and behold, there was a local one.
Yeah. Yeah. So I enrolled into the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising.
In San Francisco.
A baby.
And was that a move, or did you commute to class there?
No, I would have to commute. We have BART there. It's the subway. Oh, yeah, have you?
I have.
Was it great? Never a dull moment.
It wasn't the New York City subway system. No, BART's nice and clean and fast. And
it depends on the car that you're riding in. It's never a dull moment,
Right.
You could get a show one day, a show the next day.
Well, it happens in the city too. But,
yeah.
Okay, so you started there, and was that an awakening for you? I mean, look, I have a 3-year-old right now, and a son who was 3, and I know what that's like, even with help. So here you are, single mom.
Well,
with a 3-year-old.
I had actually just had my son, and then I decided to enroll in college again, and so now I've got a baby,
right?
Another baby, so 5-year-old, an infant, and I'm starting college again. So
Wow.
I would say that I was scared. I'm older than everyone else. You feel more poor. You're poor. You think you're poor, and you're like, at the time I didn't realize like my soul wasn't poor. That wasn't, and that's what kind of kept me through. But you feel it. You get in there and you're intimidated, but coming from where I come from, you wipe that shit off right away, so you hold face. And I was happy. So yeah, I was struggling, but I had more than I had ever had in my whole entire life at that moment. It was something for me that fed my soul. Yes, eventually my pocket, but it started with the inside, and I think we all have to start with that work first. So it was huge, and I didn't know it at the time. I was changing. I always thought I had to be this other kind of person, very pretend to be happy. You always have to be happy, 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 and I don't think that that's the only emotional spectrum for women. I think we feel many things. We're not just one thing. We're not just angry or happy. We're all of them, Could be a blessing and a curse. I love them both, though. And I think that that's really beautiful, and I started to discover that at FITM. And I was young, but it was a monumental moment at the time, and I don't think I realized it, but I started to find my aesthetic.
Okay.
We call it as like
and
a
how
creative.
did those early life experiences and those struggles inform that aesthetic?
There was an instructor at the time, and I'd always fought my past. I didn't want to lay any right to it or give it any credit for who I was. Like I refused to be a statistic, so I never ever gave it any mind. Like never talked about anything. And he sat me down. His name is Julius Lumsden, and he says, "Why are you fighting it? Like embrace it and let that be your story, and like let that be your picture, let that be your aesthetic." And like it was just, he goes, "Stop fighting it, because it's who you are, and who you are is really beautiful. And the day that you realize that, it's going to be very special for you, and it's going to be very different compared to everyone else." I mean, I don't know where, like, I had never heard anything like that before.
Yeah.
Nobody had ever spoken to me like that before.
That's life coach stuff, not professor stuff. So
No, yeah.
Kudos to
Julius.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Yeah.
Julius. And so I did, and I started embracing that side, and it had a lot, I love the color black. I think it's very mysterious. I think it's harder to design in black because it's just one blank canvas, so you have to put more thought into it. The lines and the details, it's more subtle. You have to look into it. There's more depth. The textures. Yeah, the textures are so important. The structure of whatever fabrics that you're using, they all tell very subtle stories. And it has a lot to do with my past, and like I dwelled in that darker place. And as I've gone on as a creative, it's evolved. But at that time that I was learning and creating, I learned that that was my creative process, is that I heal through moments and times in my life. So my collections are based off of emotions and not just one thing. It's the emotional story that a woman is having at one point in time in her life. It could be, childbirth, a heartbreak, like things that are very relatable, like so many people are chasing like this ideal happiness, but we can all relate to pain and hurt, but also through really beautiful things, like when you're in love with someone, you have both sides.
Right.
So
you also use a lot of leather.
I love leather.
Which is looks great in black, right? And conveys a lot of texture, changes over time.
It does. I relate it to women.
Okay. Well,
Leather.
how? Unpack that for me.
I found out early on also, I mean, it's just a whole new world opened up at FITM, that my love language, the things that I related to, and like, you know, the things that spoke back to me, it was all just leather, like very structured fabric. And it's because it reminded me of women, and the fact that I've watched so many women go through so much and just be torn apart and like tested, and I think they're just so much more beautiful because of it. With leather, you can treat it like hell, and it often looks more beautiful after it's aged and when it's been put through hell and back. The smell of it is really beautiful. The body and the shape that it takes after you wear it over time, and that all reminds me of women, you know, like our smell, our curves. And we're often, I think, more beautiful, and I don't mean just the outside, but the inside, when we've been put through hell and back. I think we carry a different air to us when we've been put through just a little.
Well said. There are some critics who've compared a lot of your designs to goth.
Yeah.
Or does that inspire you? Is that a compliment? Is that off the mark? Are you yourself a goth? You know, I mean, do you have musical interests that lean that way?
No.
Okay.
I mean, AC/DC. I mean, I listen to everything from like, I don't know, Beethoven to, sure, there's Pantera in there, but AC/DC, Lynyrd Skynyrd. My favorite, absolute favorite, like there's not a song I would skip, is Florence and the Machine. And I think that could represent my aesthetic.
Okay.
I don't get offended when they say I'm goth. I see it, and I do admire the darker side of things, but with the dark, there's also a romantic side to my designs. So it's like very dark and romantic. There's depth to it, and that can be very colorful. It could be deep colors, deep blues, deep reds, jaded greens. Yes, black, but like a deeper sea of emotion.
Yeah. Are there challenges designing in sometimes the heavy way that you do? Finding, you know, a seasonal portfolio in that? Do you struggle with spring summer or those types of fabrications, because, you know, leather can be hard to integrate into that type of wardrobe?
It is. I specialize in leather, but I do create I've just recently started to kind of open up and do ready-to-wear or dresses, wearable pieces. But I think, and in the beginning it was a struggle because my immediate go-to was very avant-garde, and it was very heavy, and not a lot of people, they go, where do you wear that to? And it's like, go to fucking Target and I don't care, you know, like it's just like,
that's on
put it on and like feel. My idea was to inspire. I was tired of seeing women, not tired of it. I related to seeing women walk around and feel empty and not feel anything. And so if I could just, I don't know, make you feel happy or extremely sad or pull you or really bother you in some sort of way, just wake you up emotionally so you could feel alive. And alive doesn't just mean happy. Alive means many things. But if I could just pull on those strings a little bit for women, I felt like I was winning. So that didn't always mean wearable pieces for me. I do make them now, but I think that was my goal. And at the same time, it was very selfish because I was trying to make myself feel alive. And I did that through creating. Now I used to struggle trying to design in spring. That was a long way of answering your question. Yes.
No. But I find that many designers, you know, there's this tension between being a commercial designer and being an artist.
Yeah, and I like to call myself an artist. Right. An
artist doesn't put anything forth necessarily for an audience, a true
No.
artist. I mean, people have different definitions, but that happens to be mine.
Yeah.
So, that struggle is not uncommon, and it's a process of evolution to get to
It is.
a median between
That
the
balance.
two. Yeah. You started swim recently. How is that going? And that strikes me as potentially a challenge, with a goth aesthetic, let's say.
Yeah.
And swim. So how is that going?
Yeah, spring and swim, at first they were very challenging because it's like, how am I going to put leather into this line? And it's like, well, you don't have to just do leather. You have this aesthetic and you have this mission. And your goal is to make women feel. Your goal is to make women feel. Not just feel confident, not just feel happy, but to feel, like sometimes we often are too much, or it's too heavy, or you feel too, if you're a woman who feels all the emotions, you're considered, I don't know, a basket case, or who knows, like there's so many names, I don't even like bring them into my vocabulary,
Right.
but
Wise.
yeah, like I don't even pay any mind to it. It's not a label I even like to, whatever. Once I let go of that, what swim and what dark and what all these labels, like what they should look like, the doors opened up because swim in my language, the darker, more romantic version, they come in dark florals and they come in, very romantic silhouettes, different cuts, still very flattering. But they're not like, very bright in your face.
Right.
They're very subtle. They have the details. There's heavy hardware, but just enough to where it's not weighing you down. It's still swim. So, yeah, excuse me, this is not functioning. I need help swimming. It's just, I think that sure, we wear clothes, they're functional. And people say, oh, it's so vain to care about what you look like, but I don't think that that's necessarily true, and vain is often looked at in a negative tone. I think that the way I present myself is how I want to be addressed and approached. And that is me telling you, this is how you're going to address me, and letting you know that I will take nothing else but that. So it's my introduction before you even know me. You see me, and whether people like that or not, I am seen. And that is what I want, and I'm okay with that. And I think that that's great to say as a woman, like
as a man as well.
As a man as well.
For sure. The sort of impact of your personal presentation and what it says about you. It's not something that everybody feels. Meaning some people are not, they just want to get dressed. They don't feel that clothes communicate anything about them. The problem, well, I'm not going to say the problem, but at least to me, it inherently says something about them because they've made a choice to put on what they're putting on, unless they're incarcerated, right? So,
that's right.
You are saying something. Whether it's, I don't give a shit, and I look like shit and I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Or I look intimidating and I do give a shit. Or I look approachable, or I look, in my case, a lot of what I try to communicate, despite wearing a bow tie today and a seersucker suit, it's blazing hot outside, is I'm capable and elegant as a lawyer. I'm a professional.
Yeah.
And
you are.
But that also can be announced before one even has the opportunity to regale you with my understanding of the 34 Act, or some piece of legislation that was recently passed, or even the negotiating posture I want to take on a certain deal.
Yes.
People form a first opinion within 30 seconds of seeing you.
Thank you. Whether people like that or not, that is exactly what I mean. And I'm going to give you what I expect in return, in a way, and that we don't even have to speak on. And And I think that that's great. Like, it's a different language without even having to have a language, you know? You just already know.
And that's the woman that you are designing for.
Yes.
And so are you your own muse?
I am. And I'm not. I love what I create, and I often I'm wearing it today. Leather belt, white cotton.
I mean, it's 98 degrees outside. There's actually that that website called Goths in Hot Weather. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't.
It's a good one. You should check it out.
I'm going to have to look at it.
By the people who brought you Look at My Fucking Red Trousers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just random captures of goths dressed in black with white makeup on in really hot weather, looking extremely uncomfortable. But I think having navigated spring, summer, you've been able to avoid some of that with your designs. And
I have. I've eased up a little.
Yeah. Are there any brands or designers that you think are similar to you, or with respect to certain seasons have had similar moments as you?
No, only some that I aspire to. I don't think that that I'm like many. I still consider myself, sure, I've been doing this for, when I got out of college after Project Runway, literally, I think it's only been 5 years. And I say only, but I think professionally 3. God, it's been a long journey. That just ran my. It's short and long time.
Well, it's like dog years, right? When it's intense, you're stuffing so much experience into any given 365 days.
Yeah.
That you really do. Back to your leather analogy, I mean, you come out as a nicely worn and greatly textured biker jacket.
Lots
at the
of
end
mistakes
of 3 years.
in that.
Well, so Project Runway, and that's where many of our listeners may recognize you from. How did that come about, and how did it catapult your brand, if you feel that it did?
Yeah, actually, I loved Project Runway. I don't think I'm like most contestants sharing the animosity for it.
Right.
Even when I did get kicked off midway through All Stars, I still have a great appreciation for that journey. They actually approached me and asked me if I wanted to try out for Project Runway. And this is I think, just 4 months right out of college. I think I was creating my first collection for London Fashion Week. How I jumped that pond, I'm not quite sure, but I just remember thinking, no, I'm not going to go on Project Runway. I'm not going to do it. And my daughter, she's little at the time. I think she was only 8 or 9. She looks up at me and she gets in my face, which, by the way, this is not her demeanor. She does not have that kind of demeanor. And she tells me, if you don't do that, I'm going to be so disappointed in you.
Wow.
I know. Those were fighting words.
Well, and that's powerful from your
very,
child.
Yeah. It was a life decision, and I just immediately was like, well, Mom's going to go. So, again, it changed me. I was on there, and, you're trying to do – it was a pure creative journey for me at the time, right out of college, still new in my skill. Something when you get on Project Runway, America thinks that you're just they stamp you as this seasoned, validated designer. I don't know about the actual fashion world, but the rest of America definitely goes, you are a validated designer. And,
well,
that's
and I think
a lot.
The rest of the fashion world has the exact opposite reaction.
They do. I know. And I'm like, God, if you guys only knew. No. So it was a very odd balance scale to kind of try and even out, because I just looked at it as an opportunity, to be honest. Yeah. I knew that every minute that I was on television was advertising for my brand. I knew everything that came out of my mouth was my brand, because going back to what you said, I am my own muse. My emotions, my feelings, my experiences, that's my brand. It's that depth. It's the emotional aspect of things. So every single thing, I looked at it as an opportunity, a chance to grow my business, and that's what I was doing while I was there.
And you were in control of what you said and what you designed on those on the show.
Yeah.
I guess the difficulty is you're not in control of how they edit it. right?
Oh, the edit. I can't wait to hear this. No, I'm kidding. No, true. You
Yeah.
have, but see, I came into it going, well, if I sit there and call someone crazy or say something extremely rude, no matter if it was about her or him or her, I still said it.
Right.
You know, they can edit that over another scene about someone, but you still said that about someone. If you're sitting there going, I'm having the hardest time, and you're like constantly mentally breaking down, then that's what you do and be proud of it. I knew who I was going into that. I knew that I was stern and that I could articulate certain things. I knew I was comfortable in that, and I'm proud of the fact that I have things to say, and I'm okay with saying them. So it didn't bother me. I think it bothered a lot of people maybe weren't confident within where they were at the time, and that's okay. You know, they're in that place in their life, but I was raised a little
You were a little more seasoned than the rest of the contestants.
I think
the designers.
Yeah, I think that the one person that I did admire on Project Runway was Swapno.
Okay.
They didn't paint him in the fashion that I think he deserved, because he's a true artist, and I think that he has like a really beautiful soul, and his work is very beautiful. And he's not a U.S. designer; he's in India, but so maybe that's where the edit was wrong.
Well, let me ask you this, and producers of reality TV, perk your ears up. I mean, what do you think the right format for a show like that featuring designers is? Is it profiles on established designers? Does the format of Project Runway and its competitive nature resonate with you? What would be the proper format for a show that you think would be the iconic fashion designer show?
I love seeing true creativity, and I wish that was more appreciated on that show. The true in-depth creativity. I think Christian Siriano, that was just a no-brainer. Everyone saw it. He had it. America couldn't ignore it. And I think sometimes the show is sometimes pivoted to possibly pick up other things other than just creativity.
The drama and the acrimony makes for good television, according to people who know TV, I guess.
Yeah, and that's fine. But I think that people actually whatever, they might like the drama, but I do think
there can be a bulk of those shows, but the fictional show that we're talking about defies that, and maybe would be the new, so would it really be more of just a profile of and an in-depth real profile of designers doing design, or?
I like the competitive aspect of it.
Okay.
I do. I like that. And everyone always says, who are you to judge art? And is that art? And, that whole conversation. You could just go on and on. We could go on and on for days. We're not going to do that. But I like the competitive aspect of it because it carries things along. But, and it drives, the true creativity out of you. I just wish it focused more on the value of the creativity and not the drama.
Yeah.
Because people do really love to see the behind the scenes, and I think that's why so many brands are doing that now. They're letting everyone see what goes on in the atelier, how it's made, how it's created, why videos are so popular, why people want to know what goes on. They want to see it. They're attracted to that. They want to know. They want to learn. They want to be a part of it because they're the ones who are buying it.
Yeah.
So they want to be a part of it,
or influenced by it, or enamored of it.
There's
a lot of consumers, probably not the right word, just a lot of admirers of brands that those admirers will never be able to afford. Maybe they end up buying a scarf or a tie or a belt from that brand.
That's often what it is.
Yeah. Well, and those are the I think Gucci sells more belts than any other product, and Hermes sells more.
Isn't that why it's always in the front of their store?
Yeah.
The accessories, when you walk in, you'll notice that that's in the front of the retail shop, all the accessories, because the margin is the most high. Yeah.
Well, you're still early stages, and I think very much staying on focus with women's wear and your perspective on women's wear. If we flashed forward to 5 successful years of the brand, what other product categories would you be interested in designing for? And I stare at your hat, as I always stare at your hats, because you are a big wearer of the chapeaus. So
I am.
Would you add accessories like hats at a certain juncture when you had things,
Yeah, I think that I see down the line very refined, women's wear, the leather side, and also for men, just leather jackets, dresses, because you'll never catch me in a pair of pants. Okay. And I think that there are women out there like that. We all love dresses. And I think hats, because that's turning into who I am, and that's becoming part of my journey and my expression. I'm a very Italian, Sicilian, Lithuanian individual, and I think that I fly my colors by my style. I think hats and, very refined, studded, leather, beautiful shoes. Okay. But I really, truly believe in getting something out there that you care about, that people will care about, that's not going to fall apart, that you're not going to throw away, and it's just going to sit in the ground forever. Pieces that you can hand down and that get more beautiful with time. Even sometimes silk and like cottons, they just change, Well,
let's talk about that, because we're at a critical moment for the planet, many would say.
Yeah.
Many brands, some of the larger ones, have really now espoused, without any true certification or industry-wide group that has the proper stamp of approval, but on being sustainable as a brand. And that can be whitewashing for a lot of things. Sustainability moves into labor practices. It moves into environmental impact.
I'm glad you just covered that, because I often wonder, what does that brand really think that means, sustainability? Like, are you just changing one thing, or can you outline what exactly? And it could mean many things. I'm glad you kind of covered that.
Right. Well, that's one layer of that massive onion. But on leather specifically, so you will have certain brands that won't use leather. From the perspective of animal rights.
That's right.
Which isn't really, to my mind, a sustainable practice as much as just a ethical practice, what they view their ethics to be.
Which can be very huge. Everyone's belief is their belief.
Well, where do you fall on that? Because you obviously make a wide use of leather.
I do.
Do you use any other furs or snakeskin or any other animals, I guess, all from a vegan perspective? Not that I'm a vegan, but...
Yeah. I did in the beginning, but as I went down that sustainable road, but not because it became a thing, because we're still talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I don't think that sustainability was a word that was so used as much as it is now. It's like Starbucks sustainability, it's like a word that is just always thrown in there, and everyone wants to jump in on it.
You can't swing an upcycled denim jacket over your head without hitting a sustainable brand or poster or
something, or like, we are. And so I don't like to get like shoved into something. I truly would like to honestly approach the situation in the way that I can honestly say I either am or am not. And so I had to start questioning those things. What does ethical mean for me and my brand? Is it important? It was. What does sustainability mean for me and my brand? Is it important? It started to be, but in the beginning it was not. And at the time, I started thinking about, well, where does this leather come from? And like, it's a byproduct of the food industry. And so I don't eat meat, which is very odd, I know, because I use leather. But as long as individuals, there's still steakhouses, that meat is being used. And there's so many products that use the whole animal. Why that skin's not being thrown away. So I utilize the skin. And that skin is created into a jacket. And that jacket can be passed down for years and years and years. It's not a faux leather where if you throw it away or if you wear it for a year, it falls apart on you. You can't repair those for the most part. You can upcycle them, which I've seen people do, but it's not something that stays in your family, or if you throw it into the ground, it's not going to... It's not biodegradable, that vegan leather jacket.
Yeah.
And
I think another salient point that you made is just that it's not something one would choose to wear past a season or two, both from the perspective of how long it lasts, but also, let's face it, when something is made, and we're not talking like a Stella McCartney fungal leather substitute on something beautiful. We're talking about a cutting the corners mass brand that is doing something that they perceive as trendy.
Yeah.
In a
I've
leather
owned a Zara
substitute.
coat.
I mean,
I've owned a Zara faux leather coat, and it scratches and tears and shreds. The paint comes off after a year.
Right.
I'm not gonna use that or give it to my daughter. I threw it away, as many people throw things away, or because they don't, and they'll go buy another one. So is that sustainable? No. But my leather jackets, I will keep, and I would not dare toss that. It's just, you keep them and you don't toss those. I think that's sustainable.
Yeah. And if a secondary market develops around gently used items, or in the case of leather, even not so gently used, denim, leather, there are these fabrics that age nicely over time.
Yeah.
There are other fabrics which, just because of their beauty and provenance and high expense level, make sense to have repaired.
That's right.
And if there is a market, I mean, there is today a market, but it's not huge, but you hear more and more about the Gen Z customer, some of the younger millennials, very much having a rental mentality or a temporary ownership mentality over most things in their lives, clothes included.
Yeah.
And that would seem to be a viable... I've heard that about 60% of what most consumers buy, apparel-wise, winds up thrown away. Whether that
Everyone
gets
tosses
upcycled
it.
ultimately, or but most of it lands in the planet.
Honestly, I hear so many people say, I mean, everyone will tell you, oh, I donated it. But honestly, I think that it does get thrown away. And these leather jackets that people are purchasing are not going to get thrown away. They cost a lot. It's a high purchase. They last a very long time. And just like we've said over and over again, they get more beautiful with time. And so to me, that is my version of sustainability, along with other things we use, like, biodegradable bags from Talon International, things like that. Our hang tags have seeds in them. You plant them, it grows a beautiful rose bush. That's nice. Like our own little touches, we won't ship in plastic. I mean, that had to come along the way, but can I ever say that I'm 100% sustainable? No. And it's just not something that I've reached. I don't know however many companies.
Well, it's up to the industry as a whole. Groups like the CFDA, groups like other international groups. I know Stella McCartney herself, now I'm talking the individual representing the brand, has spoken at the UN on this at length, and even partnered up with Google to capture information so that we can develop actual certification and the transparency so that we can see where we're getting things made. And I say we now, the collective fashion industry, not being a designer, but most people know that brands don't own their own factories, don't even own any of the means of production for most of their garments, and so therefore it's all outsourced. And how far does the obligation of diligence of where you're getting things made go? You as a small brand can't necessarily travel to a factory that is perhaps sewing together 15 items if it's a fairly bespoke item to make sure that things are being done the way that you have been told they're being done and moreover want them to be done. So that's a challenge, and the solution is disclosure, and the solution is group action, I think. But that will take time.
And being, I think that the fact that just people are interested in just trying, and just like I said, in those 3 ways for myself, just approaching, even if it's one thing, you know, and like if people, I recognize that, you know, that's trying, that's in other brands as well, like, and just be honest in that sense, and then your consumer can consciously make a decision, do they want to support you or not? So I think that consumers are more demanding in that way, and they need, you know, of brands and companies to be more honest, because at the end of the day we're all people, and people want to know. So it's a tough topic.
It's a tough topic. Let's switch to another topic.
Yeah.
So you named your brand after yourself.
I did.
Was that, and I know you had named it, and you were showing at London Fashion Week before Project Runway. But certainly the Project Runway experience underscored your personal association with the brand. Has that been a challenge in any regard, whether in connection with potential financing of the brand, recognizing that in giving up a stake of your company, you will inherently give up some ownership over your name for purposes of use in commerce? Or I don't think you've entered into any licenses, but if you ever contemplate them and, for instance, outsource hats under your brand name, that whoever that milliner is would be sewing your name into what they're producing. Does that give you any pause, or is that like...
No, there's no pause.
There's no pause.
There's no pause. Because I've built and consistently stayed true, even when I do try to stray off of my brand identity, which is my namesake, which is me, I can't. And so as long as I'm here, which I hope is for a very long time, I don't think that that'll be a problem. I mean, there's quality control and everything, but I think my aesthetic and the emotional factor of the brand stamp is there, and it's so strong that the only people who would gravitate towards me to license out or so on and so forth would be like a sister to what I'm already doing. You know, like I'm not going to attract... That's another company that's like the opposite of me. Many of them. It's just very dark and deep, and there's an emotional romanticism to it. So I know that...
Lily Pulitzer.
Yeah,
is she not the flip side of your coin?
I think so.
Know. I'm just...
Definitely.
With I was trying to think of someone anodyne that also my firm didn't represent, so... That's who I came up with. But
oh my God,
yeah,
that's
there
great.
certainly is a counterpoint to your distinct point. And
I did worry about having it be a namesake.
Well, so how did you arrive at it? Was it that artist in you that was like, what else would I name it? This is authentic to name it after myself.
Yeah.
That simple, which is fine. I mean, that's the most common answer I hear. Yeah.
Anything else would be a lie, and any other name wouldn't be it. It's like calling a horse a pig. I don't know. Is that
well, so do you when you see Everlane or Rag and Bone, or when you see a brand that has no notion,
name and no face,
no eponymous name, does that ring hollow to you, or
in a way? But because I have such an attachment to the emotional value to things, as what I'm wearing, what I'm purchasing, what I put on, what they represent, I think that people can connect to me, to my brand, me as in my brand more. Because of it, there's a face. People can relate to it, or they can know that they don't relate to it. There's a very clear name, aesthetic, personality, which is what I learned very on that you do as a brand. You put a personality to it. Well, it is my personality. So I thought with my resources and my backing, which was none, what am I going to do? I'm going to put my full emotional characteristics, value into it, and that is my brand identity, which is me. And so I worked with what I had from the very beginning, which was me. I was my only asset that I had, and that was plenty at the time.
Yeah.
So it was a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. That's good. We have covered this ground a little bit, but I'll give you yet another at bat at it. You've described some of your creations as armor.
Yeah.
You're obviously acutely aware of some of the struggles that women face with respect to body image, as well as just perhaps in the workplace, what's appropriate to wear, what's not appropriate to wear.
I don't believe in that.
Yeah. Well, so what, let's flash to you've walked around HBA.
Yeah.
Do you have a perception as to what's appropriate for a female lawyer to wear or not wear, or are you?
No, I actually hate that. And there was something in saying that kind of angered me just a bit. There's fire in me, and it, like, you just kind of woke it up. I don't think that because, and
we don't have a dress code here.
Oh, okay, that's good. I'm like, Doug, do I have to get? No, I'm kidding. Getting up.
I just think industry-wide, it's something that men and women struggle with as service professionals.
I definitely think it's a struggle.
And I think for women, it's perhaps more of a struggle because they have even more challenges in traditionally white-collar and male-dominated industries.
For sure.
Their choices are questioned beyond just that doesn't make you look professional to that makes you look available, that enhances your body in ways that are not workplace appropriate. I mean,
good. Great. Let's do that then. I mean, that's really where my brain goes. And I think of my mom all the time because I feel, which that runs my then thought process, that my assets physically do not define my characteristics on the inside, and how I wish to celebrate how you approach me, like I was saying earlier. If my cleavage is low or have tight clothes on, I'm very proud of my body. I've had 2 children. I've worked very hard for where I'm at in my confidence level, my value as a woman, and that's on the outside and very much on the inside. And so I've reached that place where my value isn't my cleavage or, like the waist size or, what you visually can and can't see. It's more within. It's just I'm very comfortable with my outside. And I've never allowed, which I can't say that for everyone, because, people are raised differently. I think that women are pushed into this box that we're supposed to be in, and we're expected to be, not to be sexual, which we all are, in whichever way we prefer. Or maybe some aren't, but whether you are or you aren't, whether you like to be covered or uncovered, I don't think that really has much to do with your work ethic. And that is just what makes me feel good. So if I want to be partially naked or fully clothed, that's what makes me feel good. And that is my preference. And I think I don't know. It angers me when we have to bind ourselves. So I don't even think this way, that I need to dress a certain way so you don't approach me in a certain manner. I don't think it, so that way I don't represent that. And I don't think I've ever been approached that way. And I don't think that that's my responsibility. My responsibility is my actions. And I think that says the same for anybody else. So if I have clothes on, no clothes on, whatever it is, I mean, we're always partially clothed in the workplace, I think. But if someone addresses me in a certain way, I don't believe it's because of what I'm wearing, as far as my cleavage is low. I don't know. That's a tough one.
Yeah. Well, and it's a tough needle to thread, I think, for women. I mean, so the book, The Laws of Style, speaks only to menswear. And men have obviously had it far easier. You put a suit on as a lawyer and you look like a lawyer in most cases. It should fit nicely. It should be made of the right seasonal materials, but we're not struggling with, are you showing too much of some part of your body? I mean, you're completely clothed, and it's basically garanimals for adults.
Yeah.
You know, you're 80% of your sartorial representation is one color or pattern.
I think it means something different for certain people too. You know, like sexual is different from careless, or confident in one's body is different from, you know, not. So everyone has their own definitions, and they wear it in different ways, and for different reasons. So it's just it's a tough one.
It's a tough one because really, as we started with personal presentation, that can be as varied as people's personalities, right?
Yeah. And the way you're dressed and how you feel and like how you're representing yourself, that is your message. But I think that the next step in humanity is speaking to one another.
Right.
So what does that mean for that person? Does that cleavage mean I stand strong in my body and my sexuality and my personality? I own it. Does it mean the opposite? So it's a very personal message, I think.
Yeah.
We all have that.
Well, you today, one of the hottest days of the year.
Yeah.
You still won't be exempted from what you're wearing today for really not so much our viewers, but those that aren't viewing and are just downloading.
Yeah.
So can you describe what you're wearing, who designed it? I have certain guesses that you might have a lot of labels sewn into those clothes, and why. And why you chose this ensemble for today. I know you had multiple activities today, and again, 98 degrees outside, so a real challenge for anybody coming in the afternoon to record a podcast.
Well, my eyebrows are melting off my face. No, I'm kidding. Head to toe, I have a beautiful asymmetrical, somewhat black felt Fedora Eugenia Kim hat.
Okay.
I love this hat just because it is
good for sun protection.
Good for sun protection. It is hot. It's like a little mini blanket, but it's also sun protection, you know?
Right.
It's a 50-50. It's just I like it because it has a certain difference to it. There's an air to it, you know? You say that you have a bow tie and you wear a suit because there's a certain elegance to you. I have tattoos all over my body, specifically the left side, but I like the hard and soft, so that elegance with a little bit of the rough, which I think is very much my brand. Only silver jewelry, hoops in every single ear that dangle.
So if you receive as a gift a piece of jewelry that has gold or brass or even like, are you that about it? Which
yeah, I don't wear gold.
Don't worry, it's just...
No, it just doesn't go with them. I've had a little sun today, but I'm fairly fair complected.
Right.
And I've got black hair and I wear red lips, and like that does not change. And so the silver kind of is a subtle contrast, but not too much. I think that the gold just kind of clashes with all of those.
Yeah, for those that are, sort of iPhone users, you're pretty much always on like the Tokyo filter, but with red lipstick.
Yeah, exactly. That is me. There you go. That is what I'm wearing today. The Tokyo filter with red lipstick. That was great.
Well, I too, men and women dress differently, but our hardware, so to speak, is a challenge. I wear less than you, but I do wear a watch every day. I do treat my belt buckle hardware as sort of part of that, and I find it to be a challenge if I'm wearing a silver watch and the belt that happens to go with my shoes, which is another conundrum because the leather should match the shoes, right?
That's right.
Happens to be brass or gold, not, but the gold color.
It clashes, and especially because it hits in the same line.
Exactly.
The vision,
Yeah.
they kind of, it's a clash. I also just don't buy anything other than silver, and I like the piles.
Fixes that problem, which
yes,
is good.
It does a
Except
little
for
bit.
Gifts.
Gifts, yeah. I work so much that I haven't piled on the gifts. It's just like, it's a constant, I'm always working.
So who, from the hat down, who makes the various accessories? I mean, is it too many you've got a lot of jewelry going on here. So is there too many? Is there one in particular that resonates with you as far as a designer?
I purchased this necklace. It's a little beautiful locket, as you would call it, possibly, but it has a little kind of bell inside of it, and it's a sphere, and it has carnelian stone at the bottom. So I don't take it off. I got it in Bali, and it's not by a designer. There's an emotional attachment to it, as most things are with me.
Yes.
The dress is a white cotton off the shoulder. It has ruffles, and it's cinched at the waist with a leather Candice Cuoco belt. The dress is also Candice Cuoco.
Okay. Where did the cotton come from? I'm curious, because I was in Greece recently and discovered the cotton there just seemed better. I don't know. Just lighter. But more for the purpose with which I would approach a cotton garment, which is light and breathable.
Yes, but this has more of a structure to it. So when we create the shape and the sleeves, they're kind of like very mini Lego mutton puff sleeves, as you may possibly call them. It's a heavier cotton.
Okay.
That way it holds its structure. And I always belt things or cinch things at the waist. I just like the structure of it. Like it feels
girded.
Yes,
Which
and
I think
I'm
is where
ready.
The word girdle comes from. But
probably, I don't know that answer, but it sits me up straight, and it gives me that posture, and that's how I approach things.
And footwear, which
They're
you
actually,
don't necessarily have to bring into the shot. But
well, they're leather pointed Calvin Klein.
Okay.
They're belted at the ankle, but I have a really high arch, so I can't wear a flat.
Okay.
But yeah, I have been doing some sightseeing, lots of running around with my daughter, and it's just a small little heel, but it's a block heel because you can get around in those in New York.
Yeah. Well, it's a muggy day for sure.
Yeah.
With a little bit of time that we have left,
Okay.
I would love to hear your comments on directionally where you think the industry is going with respect to unisex design. There seem to be more gender fluid consumers out there in the younger segment of the market than ever before. And I think certain design houses are responding to that with unisex offerings. Do you think that is kind of latching onto a fad, or do you think that is a... Okay.
No, I don't think that it's a fad. I think that it could possibly feel as one because it's a topic, but it's always been a thing. I mean, women wear men's clothes, men wear women's clothes. They wear this, he and she wears that. I mean,
are there things you design or have designed to date where you felt strongly, this is really, I'm a women's wear brand, but this could easily be worn by a man, and even you happen to know men that have purchased and worn them? You don't like pants, so I'm going to assume you don't make pants.
And I don't necessarily think that all men need to be in pants.
Right.
They can, I've seen from the very beginning. I'm like, God, I wish I could see, like a beautiful guy and one of my, very straight dresses or the leather jackets that bleed often into both worlds, men's wear, women's wear. I feel like it could just be worn by anybody, and I don't think that anybody would openly say it. I know people in the past have, but I think that other people might have a problem with that. And I've always found beauty in it because it's different. There's like an emotional story behind why they enjoy that. And it represents them. And that is their message. And you see it before they can even say it. And how you approach it is your own responsibility. Going back to what I'm wearing and how people approach that, that's other people putting value on it, but they have value and emotion into that. So yes, I say women's wear because if I'm pitching my leather jacket line to Barney's or Neiman's or Nordstrom or something like that, like there's still that box that they define it by, and people need to go, I'm going to go buy a jacket up in the women's department. But do only women or men, can they only wear it? No. I love when my clothes are ripped inside out, pulled upside down, worn by he, she, them. I think it's beautiful because it tells a different story, and that's what I'm really after.
And it's nice that we're at a time where that is a more open conversation, certainly. When I was going to law school back in the 90s, really one of my study partners was a guy who went on to write The Man in the Gray Flannel Skirt.
Nice.
He was fluid
Yeah.
and dressed that way as an undergrad in Columbia, but then kind of tried to reverse course to his style chagrin in law school. But hard environment to wear a skirt in as a man who wasn't identifying other than heterosexual at the time.
That's hard because you're asking people to open up to something that they don't understand, and in turn you're volunteering yourself to be the one to explain and help them understand that. And then with not understanding comes anger and frustration, and they get scared or whatnot. And so I'm aware of that when I am a certain way or dress a certain way, and like I have an approach in that way, like let me help you understand or see, and hopefully they're open-minded enough to possibly take something away with it that they could learn from. Not everyone does, and that's okay, but it's a courageous thing to lead one's own and not be like anyone else. And so I admire this man that you speak of.
Well, we have to break.
Yeah.
So that's a wrap. Candice, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for listening to me go on and on about emotions.
Please. I'm sure our listeners are rapt attention. Any social media handles that our listeners should be following or events coming up in your orbit that you want to promote?
Yeah, I'm actually releasing my first solely leather jacket line and pulling out archive pieces that we're going to start offering to our customers. And going back to, having my name be my brand name, it's all on every single possible thing, Candice Cuoco. And it's Cuoco. It means cook in Italian.
Means Coke?
Cook.
I was going to say Coke.
That would be interesting. I don't do either.
Right. Well, the brand is certainly cooking. And we are certainly going to be cooking. Yeah. Excuse the pun. But hottest day of the year, undoubtedly.
Yes.
Have a safe trip back.
Thanks.
And thanks for coming on.
I'm excited. Thanks, Doug.
Bye now.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Laws of Style with Douglas Hand. For more information, go to our website at www.hballp.com. And you can also follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Hand of the Law. Thank you for tuning in, and stay stylish.